Hi, this is Jerry Reynolds for Sacramento Electronic Supply, who has been servicing the Sacramento area's industrial electronic needs for over 75 years. Family owned and operated, Sacramento Electronics is a registered California small business that prides themselves on their customer service. Their showroom and warehouse are open to the public to browse. Whether you're looking for wire and cable, tools and testers, connectors, or relays, Sacramento Electronics is open for you Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., directly south of Costco in Rancho Cordova, or hey, visit them online 24/7 at www.sacelec.com and do it. Oh, another rebound in a crowd by the Brock Nest Monster. Ooh, that would be deja vu. Jim Bob goalie, holy moly. How about the Tasmanian Slovenian with the stop, drop, and pop? Hippity hop with the King's Herald Barbershop.
You're listening to the King's Herald Show, a bi-weekly NBA podcast that covers all the ups and downs, ins and outs of your one and only Sacramento Kings. As always, I'm your host, Will Griffith, and with me today, writer for the King's Herald, my co-host, Tony Xypteras. Tony, how's it going today?
Will, it would be going better if Sabonis had a healthy right hand, but outside of that, it's going all right.
That's great. You're absolutely right on that. We're going to jump into that today. But first, he's a former Sacramento Kings head coach, GM and color analyst, the GM of a WNBA champion, Indiana Basketball Hall of Famer. It is the true pride of French Lick himself, the undeniable Jerry Reynolds. Jerry, as always, an absolute pleasure to have you. How's it going today?
Pleasure to be with you guys. Going great. Except for the last two Kings games, but hey, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, happy post-Christmas to you both. The Kings are 3-3 since last we spoke, with a loss to the Sixers near the end of a long road trip. Ugly losses at home, as Jerry has alluded to the Hornets and the Wizards, but also grind them down victories against the Raptors and Pistons, and a decent walloping of the Lakers at home. So I guess we can start with the bad news first. We're going to start here more generally with the Kings, then we'll get very specific here. The Kings, even in their victories during this last 2 week stretch, they've seemed to backslide or struggle a little bit. Those losses to the Hornets and Wizards were both pretty ugly, pretty bad losses. Struggling for most of the game against teams like the Raptors and Pistons certainly also isn't a good sign. So guys, what's the pattern here? What stands out to you about this recent stretch of games where even where the Kings are winning, they're kind of winning in ugly or less than a heroic fashion here?
Well, to me, we're just not getting the same production from the bench. Yeah. The bench has been really outstanding for the most part, but probably the last 5 or 6 games, they haven't been, nearly as much. Of course, maybe that's not a total surprise. That, and I guess I would say, very disappointing to me, at least, is just the overall team defense, because it really isn't very good. I think we saw strides made, but when you're at home and you're playing some teams that aren't good offensively and they're scoring a lot of points, that isn't a very cheerful circumstance.
Tony, what about you? What have you seen from the fans' perspective here on what the Kings have been going through these last couple of weeks?
Well, it hasn't been Sabonis, and it's kind of been everyone else's, sort of my take on it. Even Fox, who came back since we last recorded, his scoring, his raw scoring numbers are still very good, but his efficiency is down quite a bit from where it was at the beginning of the year. Like Jerry said, Malik Monk, his 3-point shot completely lost in December. He's shooting less than 30% from 3 this month. So that's tough. Davion Mitchell's offense hasn't been there. Harrison Barnes while Harrison Barnes has had some strong games, his 3-point shooting is down. I think he's shooting also 30% from 3 on the season. So the Kings have had a lot of players outside of Sabonis see their productivity decline quite a bit since the beginning of the year.
We were able to make kind of the excuse during that long road trip of theirs that they were going up against some of the best defenses in the league. It was like, I think 4 of those opponents were in the top 12 in defense. I'm curious now that they've played some bad teams and either lost pretty poorly or just pulled out victories in the last couple of minutes there. Is this a scheming thing, or is this just an entire team that's gone through a slump, especially from deep?
Well, yeah, that's a question I don't know the answer to. It's certainly, I think the team is taking or settling for tougher shots from three
Yeah.
than we saw earlier. Maybe a little less ball movement with, Sabonis is exception to every rule on this team, but yeah, the productivity has slipped a little bit. Like I say, the bench is still a work in progress at the center position. All that is showing up, but like I say, I just think mostly it's given up too many easy shots to the opposition, and I mean, and settling for some tough shots for yourself, and that will get you in trouble.
Tony, how much do you see this could be something that's like an opponent scouting thing where the teams are just watching the Kings? They know how the Kings play after 30 something games, or is this, do you feel like, in your opinion, something that they'll pull out of?
I mean, this is this is why for as exciting as the beginning of the year has been and is, the Kings are not really out of the weeds in the Western Conference yet. Like if you look at the standings, everything is so flat. If they had beat Charlotte and Washington, they'd be I think like a game and a half behind the first seed in the Western Conference. But losing those two games, now they're 2.5 games above the 11 seed, which is the Golden State Warriors. So there's still plenty of movement that the Kings can make in both directions. And I think that comes back to the fact that this is not a very good defensive team. We kind of knew that going in. They were historically great on offense for the first few months of the season. And now we're running into a stretch where the team that wasn't great on defense coming into the year is not playing great on defense. And now their offense is starting to not be historically great. And I think you're kind of seeing the results of that, which is two really bad home losses against the Wizards and Charlotte.
Jerry, as a coach and a GM in this league, what would your opinion be on how you get this team back to righting the ship? If you were a coach or a general manager, what would you be doing? What would you be scheming for in order to get the team kind of back where it needs to be?
I think defensively, I would press a lot more. I think you've got pretty good depth. You don't protect the basket real well. So pick up sooner. I've been really disappointed in that. And some of the bad games the Kings have played is when they did press late, it was very effective. I'm not saying you can do it 48 minutes or full court, but there's no reason in my mind that you can't start picking guys up with the dribble, 10 foot before they cross the line. And that alone limits your options. If you could, get a team to work hard just to get in their offense with 14 seconds on the clock as opposed to 18. And so to me, that's a weakness. And I think they need to play more zone, just absolutely play more zone. Now, what type of zone and how they match up and all that. But I think as a tempo breaker and just show more looks, because if you just come out there and kind of look the same for 48 minutes, don't be surprised in this league if some teams kind of figure you out. And I think we're seeing that.
So one of the things that Mike Brown specifically pointed to recently is the lack of a backup five. He mentioned that he needs somebody to bring consistent energy, contain their matchups without the help of the double team, protecting the rim with verticality, boxing out, putting pressure on the rim offensively. He kind of listed out one day, what he needs from a backup center, and then kind of mentioned that, like, yeah, I went with Holmes, I went with Metu. Now we're going with Keita for a little while. The Kings have 4 centers on this roster. They've got Holmes, Metu, Keita, and Alex Len. But they don't seem to be happy with anybody filling that role. Is this a hole that needs to get plugged by one of them eventually? Or do you guys kind of foresee this as something that a trade's going to need to happen in order to bring in a worthy backup?
Well, it's an old saying. I mean, if you've got 3 quarterbacks, you don't have any. And to me, if you have 4 centers, you don't have any. You certainly, need that has been a problem. It's hard to get enthused about any of the guys. I mean, we've seen it. Rashawn play a certain way a couple of years ago and is pretty efficient, very efficient. Metu really isn't the center, but and small ball he can. Queta, I mean, he had his moments. I mean, I think there's a player there. But I'm not at all sure that Alex Len ain't the best of the bunch for the style they're playing. Because he can pass and he can spot shoot, and he's really big. And now, having said all that, whether he is or not, that's maybe it's who cares. But they need to get better there. And I mean, to me, if I were Monty McNair, I'd sure be kicking the tires on Mo Bamba, someone like that. That because you really need to find. Besides, it's not the Nerlens Noel crap who is not very good and wouldn't fit this team. I mean, I think you need to, if you're going to trade and try to get some help there, get somebody that fits with your best player, and that's Sabonis. And so Noel doesn't do that, or DeAndre Jordan, or really DeMarcus Cousins. But I think as certainly Bamba would be a guy that might be available. The brother of Tony's favorite player, Franz Wagner could be available, and he's pretty darn good. He's a high post kind of center, and I think the Magic have found out that they're getting as good a production from him as they got from Wendell Carter Jr., if not better. So there's guys out there. So I'm rambling here, but to me it really comes down to trying to fill a need and have somebody fit with your best player.
Absolutely. Tony, how do you feel about this backup center hole that they have right now?
I think I'm aligned with Jerry 100% on this one. I would love Mo Bamba if you can trade for anyone who shouldn't cost a lot. And of the players that are still here, I would give Alex Len a shot. I mean, Alex Len has been here for a while now, and he's had stretches where if you're looking for someone who can defend the rim and then not make any mistakes offensively, Alex Len is kind of that guy. Like, the problem with Metu is he's undersized and he likes to shoot a lot. Well, Len is neither of those things. The problem with Keita is that he's inexperienced and he might not be good. We don't really know. Well, Len is experienced. And the problem with Holmes is that for some reason he forgot every good thing he used to do on the basketball court. So Len is kind of the guy that makes the most sense, and he's also the one that hasn't had a chance yet. So by virtue of not having an opportunity to mess up yet, he's kind of my favorite option there. One other dark horse random option that I don't hate, and it's going to make you undersized, but just take the center out of it. Play Trey Lyles as your backup 5. Have KZ Okpala play 4. He's a good defender, and he's a long defender. Maybe you can cover up any holes there, because I think Lyles has been pretty solid off the bench most of the year. So if you don't have a center that can play well, just don't play one. It's kind of my fifth solution. But if Bamba's available, go get Bamba. One other name I'll throw out there, might not fit with Sabonis, so I don't know if Jerry's going to like him, but the Lakers are not using Damian Jones, and he was very good here for the Kings last season. I wish McNair had kept him. He didn't. He got paid a little bit more with the Lakers, but the Lakers aren't using him, and maybe there's a trade to be made there too.
I like Damian. I thought to hear he was a pretty good fit. I was a little surprised they didn't bring him back, but he clearly isn't fitting, with the Lakers. And I mean, what you're looking for is a 10-minute guy, 10, 12-minute guy that will, fit with Sabonis, bring something different. The reason I put Bamba and he'd be the hardest to get because he's good, is that he could play with Sabonis as well as behind him. Now, none of those, and I mean, and I think Tony's suggestion about Trey Lyles, I wouldn't be scared of that either, because he's a bigger body, bigger than Metu. He can make 3-point shots. You can, you're playing small, but a lot of teams are doing that. So I think that's something I think they should consider if they can't, going forward. They've got to look at something a little different because it isn't working.
Taking Sabonis' injury out of this, how long do you think the Kings can wait and kind of patch it up with what they've got before it really becomes a pressing need for the Kings to fill that backup center role?
Well, I think it's a pressing problem today. I don't know. It's been a problem, and I mean, the coaching staff's doing what they can. They're, it's like at some point you can try to pound square pegs into round holes, and it's just a weakness. So I'm sure that I'm pretty confident the coach and general manager are aware of their problems. Now it's how do you solve them? And it's like Tony pointed out at some point, okay, you better try something different because what you're doing didn't work. Now it may not work either, but I'm always of the opinion that, well, if it isn't working, try something different. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, it's kind of broke.
I'm curious. We've talked about him a little bit in the past, but you're speaking of broke here. What's happened to Richaun Holmes? Do you feel like this is something because it carried over from last year, even before the trade, where he was dealing with issues getting smacked in the eye. Then he was dealing with personal issues out, off the court. And then this season he came in with a defined role as kind of the backup center. He's paid. He's got a good contract. I mean, this is a guy who 2 years ago was starting and earned that. I think it was $10 million a year for his play. What's up with Richaun Holmes where he can't see time on the floor? Is this the yips or is this just a player pouting? Or Jerry, where do you see Richaun Holmes fitting in right now because of the way he's playing?
Well, it's very disappointing to me. I did think that if you're going to play Richaun, you got to play him different. So it creates, as a backup guy, he was pretty good in the pick and rolls and things of that nature. He's not going to be you can't run your offense through him. You might run to him some, but not through him. And so that being said, that hurts him when he plays. But what's to me is on him, I don't see the enthusiasm that we saw consistently from Richaun. I always thought there was a guy that every night a couple of years ago he played his butt off. And you could count on him giving a great effort. He might be overmatched, but he was quite productive and really, hustled and showed some real toughness. And we're not seeing that. Haven't seen it for a while. And so now, what's the reason? I honestly think there's some, and I'm trying to read into people's mind. You should never do that. But I just feel like there's a little pouting going on that it's like, well, Sean, you're paid to play basketball. Time to move on. You can pout during the summer if you need to, but right now you need to be a basketball player, and you agree to just honor your contract as a basketball player. Do the best you can.
Richaun's gone from a guy who his first 2 years with the Kings was averaging, I'm looking here at 7.7 rebounds in 26 minutes a game, only now to be dropped. He's playing less than 10 minutes a game. They literally cannot put him on the floor right now without him immediately getting yanked. Tony, I'm curious, is this a Mike Brown thing where Mike Brown might need to scheme a little bit more for Richaun Holmes? Or is this on Richaun Holmes where he has not impressed Mike Brown in practice or whatever else like that and is unable to play with this current King squad?
Mike Brown's a better NBA coach than me, obviously, but I wouldn't change a thing for Richaun Holmes' sake. I mean, Holmes was a guy who, when he first came to the Kings, he was the third center, and he won minutes by playing hard and rebounding and hitting floaters. And that wasn't the Kings scheming around optimizing him. It was just Richaun Holmes taking the very limited minutes he was getting and proving he was the best option at center on the roster until Luke Walton finally gave him that starting role. It was one of Luke Walton's best decisions was yanking, I think it was Dwayne Dedman at the time, and putting Richaun Holmes in at starting center. The Kings do have different personnel than they did back then. I think of guys that helped Richaun Holmes play well. It was Bogey in the pick and roll. It was Tyrese Halliburton in the pick and roll. The Kings don't have that pick and roll passer at guard right now that they used to, but that's still not an excuse because, like I said, Holmes was making a big impact in very limited minutes when he first got here, and that type of effectiveness, that hustle effectiveness, the playing harder, he was outworking guys to get his minutes, and he's not doing that anymore. And if I'm Mike Brown, I'm definitely not rewarding that in some weird way by giving him working a different offense around him. Now, if Sabonis is out for an extended period of time, then you might go to Holmes because now it's like, oh, congrats. The minutes are here for you. Maybe you'll play hard again and then you switch things up. But right now, Holmes has been so bad. I just don't think he's earned any level of special treatment by the Kings or Mike Brown.
You listen to something that when Mike Brown listed off those things that he needs from the backup five: consistent energy, containing their matchup without help of double teaming, protecting the rim, with verticality, boxing out, putting pressure on the rim offensively. Those are things in Holmes' first 2 years that he would do fairly well. Now, he also listed without fouling, and I think that was something that Richaun Holmes has kind of struggled with at times here. but it kind of shocks me just how steep the crash for how steep the crash for Rashawn Holmes stock is right now, in terms of where he was just prior to trading Tyrese Halliburton to right now, where he can't see even 10 minutes on the floor. Okay, so this is kind of the big news. This is the thing that we really wanted to get to today. This is why we're here on the 26th of December, right after Christmas, hungover on our eggnog and everything else. Sabonis has a right hand injury, and that he got in the waning minutes of the Wizards game. Woj dropped an update on Christmas Eve that basically said nothing, basically stating that the X-rays after Friday's loss to Washington confirmed an injury took place, and that the timeline on a return could depend on pain tolerance, and that he's undergoing further testing and evaluation. He's leading the league in rebounding. He is 12th in the league in assists. Talk to me about the effect Sabonis missing time will have on the Kings, and what an extended period of losing Sabonis might mean for the Kings' chances of making the playoffs this season.
Well, it would devastating be a pretty good word, you think? I mean, I think it's they could play a game or so maybe. I think guys would step up and you'd get, but I think because we see that happen in the league when key guys go down. But if you're talking about a 10 or 12 game stretch, no, this could be devastating in my opinion, because he's easily the best, most valuable player on this team. And honestly, as I said the last time, other than Jokic, what big player in the West is better than he is? I mean, we know Anthony Davis is the games that he plays, which is reasonably rare. But it'd be devastating to the Kings, no question. I just wonder, since there's no news on it, I'm just going to speculate here that it's probably not as serious as we're afraid of, because certainly a hand injury could be a really bad bruise, type thing, which definitely be painful. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think Domas is just so different than most players. He's wants to play more. We've seen his stamina and his toughness, and I really believe if there's a way to get out there, he'll get out there. And if it's just a play through pain thing, I think he'll be out there. I mean, to where he's not putting himself at risk. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Tony, how fast is the sky falling for you with this hand injury?
Well, I get to play breaking news here because Jerry's absolutely right. The Kings released a statement, a Domantas Sabonis update, and the word is that he sustained an avulsion fracture in his right thumb, but he's going to try and play through it. So Sabonis is not going to be healthy for a while, but he's going to play like Jerry said he would. If he can stay on the court, good luck getting him to sit games. So he's listed as questionable right now. I guess another report from practice, I think James Ham just had this, that Alex Len was practicing with the starters. So if that's any indication of who might back him up, if Sabonis does play, there's your new center rotation. But the Sabonis injury, even if he plays through it, is going to be rough. It's not a shooting hand, which is great, but it's still a fractured thumb, which I didn't know you could fracture a ligament. I thought fractures were just for bones. So you learn something new every day. But shout out to Sabonis for playing through it. The Kings need him. It's a tough stretch coming up. I think I looked at the schedule. The next 6 games are all against playoff teams over 500. So with how close the Western Conference standings are, the Kings need him, and it looks like they're going to get him. So thank you, Sabonis, for playing through it, I guess.
So this kills absolutely 90% of what I was going to talk about today, and I appreciate them for letting us off early today. We can still roll with this anyways. How does Sabonis's injury, knowing that he's going to play through it, knowing that that's probably going to affect him a little bit, how does this impact Fox and what he needs to do on the floor in terms of being the scoring leader of this team and being the point guard of this team?
Well, he needs to be more productive. I mean, he's played well, but you need more from him. And as the guy that you're not going to be able to run your offense through Sabonis if he's not there, or even if he is there, maybe, in my opinion, if he's there, you go through him. I don't care. He's got one, if he can catch the ball, he can play. But I think if he's out, then Fox has to kind of take it on him to make up for some of the offense and some of the playmaking. And I think he can do both, and so he has to. So you can't have walkabout quarters and things like that. I think he has to, be the best Fox he can be.
Tony, what about you? What do you see that Fox needs to step up on now that Sabonis' injury is not going to take him out of any games, but might affect his play a little bit?
Yeah, this is Fox's chance now to be the all-star. I think there's a bit of an open race in the West for another guard spot, and Fox can earn it if he can carry this team for a little while here while Sabonis is not 100%. One thing that Fox needs to do better, and he's really struggled with this since he came back from injury, is his three-point shot, which has never been a strength of his, but I pulled the number here. Since he returned, he's only shooting 25% from three. So, he's going to hit his twos, he's going to get to the free throw line, but if he can start shooting again, like he was earlier in the year, that'd be huge for the Kings, because they've had issues across the board in their starting lineup with 3-point shooting, whether it's Harrison Barnes, everyone but Kevin Huerter has had different areas, different periods of struggling from three. So Fox, keep doing what you're doing on offense with your 2-point shot, but try and hit those threes again like you were earlier would be my advice. And also just carry this team. He did it for stretches earlier this year, and now it's his turn to take the ball from Sabonis, who has been carrying this team for about 2 months now.
It's kind of interesting too, of all the 3-point shooters, and I know that goes in cycles. That Herter's had his moments of struggle and this, that, and the other, but really the only guy that seems to be getting better shooting threes is Sabonis.
Yeah, I know.
So it's like, holy cow. So anyway, I don't see, he's 39%. I don't think he is a 39% shooter, but he's been a 32% for his career. I always said in Indiana, it just always amazed me how people say, well, Miles Turner can really shoot the deep ball, Sabonis can't. And I said, well, they're both shooting 32%. So, I guess one 32% ain't as good as another 32%.
The Kings' next 5 games are 2 against Denver, 2 against Utah Jazz, and a game. Those Jazz games are split by a game against the Memphis Grizzlies. How much do you think Sabonis playing has to deal with? Like, they've got 5 really tough games coming up here before a little bit easier stretch down the road. How much do you think Sabonis playing has to do is the fact that they can't lose all 5 of these games and at this point in the season?
Well, that's a good point. I think it just comes down to the guy.
Sure.
I think he's a guy who wants to play.
Sure.
Really an old school 80s, 90s kind of guy. Of course, his dad was that and played with a lot of injuries. And I think he's a chip off the big giant block. And so I don't think he's looked at schedule. And if I were him, I wouldn't either, because the Kings, really, there's nobody they can take lightly. Mm-hmm. Every game, any game you can win, whether it's against a good team or a bad team, goes up in the standings. And to me, that's how they got to look at it. That's why these last 2 have been so frustrating.
Okay, we're going to roll over to a commercial break real quick, and we'll be right back.
Sacramento Electric Supply now has stock on new and exciting Klein Tools products, from the Power Hub 1 to the KTB-500 portable power station. Sacramento Electronics has all your job site power needs. Stop by their location directly south of Costco in Rancho Cordova, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Or visit them online 24/7 at www.sacelect.com.
All right, we are back from that commercial break. We're going to roll over to our Anything But King segment, a portion of the podcast where I get to ask Tony and Jerry to talk about any other game, any other team, any other storyline from the sports world that they've encountered over the last 2 weeks. The only rule is they don't get to talk about the Kings or baking shows. I'm going to start throwing that in here pretty quick.
Oh, no.
Because I know Tony. It was Christmas time. Tony was watching some baking shows at some point in the last 2 weeks, and I refuse to let him do it again. So Tony, why don't you go first, and we'll let Jerry jump in there.
Sure. I'll spare everyone my depressing Patriots takes. I have watched them, but I'm starting to feel like Mac Jones is not the guy, which is very disappointing. But I will throw a movie recommendation out there because most people that I've seen on Twitter and in real life saw Glass Onion the last few days on Netflix, and I won't spoil anything. I would just say you should watch it. It's a very fun movie.
Jerry, what about you? What have you been doing in sports this week?
Well, I mean, I've been watching about everything, so that doesn't change. But here's my thought. I really got a kick out of Greg's little column, and I guess everybody's involved of Christmas names, and so I thought I would give you the ones that I approve, which means I don't care about the rest of them.
Nice.
And then you know those of you like other tell me to kiss your butt. I don't care, but I liked Holmes for the holiday, Merry Christmas, and Merry Christmas. Those are my three favorites. I just don't think you could go wrong with any of those. And so that was a well-conceived, thought out little target in semi-journalism.
Did either of you two watch Christmas basketball at all, or did you guys do other things for Christmas?
Well, I watched. I was about to go nuts between football and basketball because there were some football games I was far more interested in than the basketball games. But I did watch. I watched certainly the Warriors and the Grizzlies, and then Lakers and Mavs. But other than that, it was kind of bits and pieces of that. And same way with football, I wanted to watch, Aaron Rodgers and the Pack, see what they could do and see if they're still alive. That's always interesting. And so that was it for me.
Yeah, Tony, I'm going to say I would never trust the man whose first name is McCorkle. I don't know why. I don't know why you thought that a guy named McCorkle would be able to be your future in football. But
it was a great rookie year. That's all I can say.
Okay, so Tony, we're going to roll over to the Patreon today.
Thanks, Will. On every episode of this podcast, we ask at least one question from our Kings Herald patrons. You can subscribe at patreon.com/Kings Herald. Every question that gets asked gets answered, whether it's here or on the Patreon exclusive show that we record once a month. But today's question comes from Dutch Kings fan, and we kind of hit on some of this, but I'd like to know Jerry's thoughts in a more targeted manner. Dutch Kings fan asks, the Kings have been bad when Sabonis rests. Is that because A, he's simply really good, B, he has poor backups, C, Brown's offensive system needs a Sabonis type and stumbles when someone else steps in, or D, all of the above? What do you guys think, and can this be fixed?
Well, number one, it's D. Yeah. D, all the above. There's no doubt about it. You hit it. It's all little bits. Can it be fixed? I think it can. In other words, with existing personnel, it's going to be a lot harder. It'd be, if you could make the right deal, it would be much easier. But with the existing personnel, you can, but you're going to have to make some adjustments to that personnel. That trying to plug somebody in to play like Sabonis, you can't do it because unless you get Jokic, there's nobody else that can.
Jerry, Dutch Kings fan, asks a follow-up based on last week's episode. But he says also, how does Jerry feel about New Year's, and where does it rank in his holiday top 10?
It would be probably about right at the bottom. Since I quit drinking, I think alcohol plays a big role, and so probably in my middle 60s, and of course that was, and certainly getting diabetes, that all played into it. My doctor always told me, said, well, you can have a couple of beers, and I always said, what's the point? A couple. If you my strategy was try to drink them all. And so that's changed. And so me and Mrs. Reynolds, we pretty much pack it in, when it's midnight in New York, that counts for us.
Sure.
And, fortunately, we have some younger neighbors that are they're still thrilled about another year, and so we tolerate them because we like them. And so anyway, that's it doesn't rank very high.
Will, I know we were across the board, not a huge Christmas podcast, but what do you think about New Year's?
There are like every holiday, there's good and bad. I like it more than I like Christmas, but I think that it's got bad music. Auld Lang Syne is just an old song that needs to be put down once and for all. It's a very old song. It needs to be retired. Martinelli's. I don't know what it is about Martinelli's, but I was going to suggest, hey Jerry, drink some Martinelli's if you can't have champagne or anything else. But it does something to my system. I cannot have more than 2 sips of Martinelli's before I'm sitting on the throne for a little while. And I don't know. That is a drinking holiday, Jerry, and it's one of those things that I always wake up. I always start my new year just absolutely feeling like garbage, and that's probably not a good thing. So it's like, oh, this is not a good start. Rose Parade's nice. I don't mind the Rose Parade, although it doesn't need to be 6 hours long and have color commentary over the whole thing. Just show me some really nice. I want a really nice slideshow of all the. Wow, look at all those. Good job. And I don't need to watch 6 hours of it, but it's probably near the bottom, but not because it doesn't try to win my affections. It's just not that fun.
Well, you can always remember the thrill too of the watching a Siwash Bowl on January 1st or some just meaningless thing. Now that they got to ESPN, stop it. Just stop it. It's better for humanity if you just quit covering those things. People don't care. Even the teams don't care. And they make, I don't know. So I'm done with that. I'll watch the couple of bowls outside the four contenders, and that's it. So, and that's enough. That's enough, America.
I used to love New Year's. I feel like I've aged out of New Year's, unfortunately. So now it's whatever. I will say hockey doesn't get a lot of play on this podcast, but the Winter Classic is very cool, and it's a very fun event, and that is usually around New Year. So it's not the worst sports day. I guess I'll give it that.
I'm going to ask Tony only because I'm not a hockey person. Is that the game that they play outdoors?
Yeah, and it had been. I mean, I don't know. They used to do it once a year, one place, and it was really cool. I think they do a few now, and it maybe kind of lost what it was. But the first couple that it did, like at Fenway, were really fun. The Bruins playing hockey at Fenway Park. That's a cool scene.
You're right. That we don't play a lot of hockey on this podcast, and probably for good reason. All right, Jerry, we're going to roll over to you for the Reynolds wrap up. We had a short show today, but we wanted to get some people some looks right after Christmas before a big stretch of the Kings. So what do you have for us today to wrap up the show?
Well, I noticed where the NBA really took some serious moves, punishment for the Knicks in their probably violation of talking to Jalen Brunson in the contract a bit early. They're going to fine him a 2025 second round pick. And if that don't scare the crap out of agents and teams, I don't know what would. And, and I understand it's one of those deals that I don't think they can ever prove. And so, in my opinion, teams are always going to do it, agents and people. And I might have been involved in some of that myself. So I can't, I've taken an early phone call. But I would advise teams, wait a little while before you sign the damn guys. I know you've agreed to contracts, but don't make it just embarrass the league where they've got to punish you so severely. Guys will go where they want to go, and there's not much reason to make it any more difficult than that.
I feel like, Jerry, doesn't that incentivize the league as well? Like if I know I could get Jalen Brunson for 25 second rounder and then a bunch of money, wouldn't that incentivize you to like go out there and hunt those kinds of guys if you know it's only 1 second rounder that I'm losing?
Oh, absolutely. But here's the point. They've been doing it.
Yeah.
And they're going to continue to do it. They're not, that's the whole point. The only thing that does, and I agree, if you could find a way to keep it from happening, totally happening. Yeah. I don't believe that you can. I believe that agents and will have us figure out a way to talk and get things agreed to and at the end of it, the player and agent will make that decision. As opposed to on a Monday, do they make it on a Friday, type thing. I don't see the real problem. I mean, with Jalen Brunson, had they been able to not talk to Jalen a few days sooner, would he not went to the Knicks? My guess is he still would have.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is it's a silly penalty, but I think it's a penalty that, all it's going to do is to, teams just be smart. You're going to cheat. We know you're going to cheat, and just don't make it so obvious.
Yeah. Reading that press release, I felt a lot like every last 2-minute report where it's like, oh, great. Like thanks for the info out of the NBA, I guess. It didn't really do anything for me. That doesn't really take anything away or help in any way whatsoever. But now I know you messed up. Cool.
It's a very similar situation when I was coaching in junior college, and of course we recruited nationally and all that. But people would say, "Well, are you sure you're not breaking any rules?" I said, "I'm pretty sure I am." But I said, unless I turned myself in. And since I have no investigative force, I would have to turn myself in and produce the evidence against myself. And the odds of me doing that were quite slim at that time.
All right. Well, for everyone here at the King's Herald Show, I want to thank you guys for listening to another podcast. We're not going to see you till the new year. So please be safe for all your New Year celebrations, whether that's alcohol free or with Martinelli's or whatever else you got in store. Don't drink too much of it. It'll hurt either way. And make sure you come back to us safe here in 2 weeks. And I'm sure we'll have news to talk about then. So appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the new year.